Well, hello and welcome to Sunday Encore, where we have candid conversations about the practical applications of Sunday's message. Well, hey, we're back for another episode of Sunday Encore, where we sit down to recall the truths of Sunday's message and consider some practical applications for our everyday lives. We're so excited to be here with you today. If you are a new listener, welcome to the pod. If you are a recurring listener, we'd love to encourage you to share the link with someone, give us a like or a thumbs up or a 5-star rating, wherever you might be listening to, so that we could so that we can continue to reach more people with the hope for the message of Jesus.
Listen, we only say that every week. You think you'd be able to get that out, but it happens.
It is early.
It is.
It's really not, but I'm just tired.
Well, last night we had a little staff board Christmas party last night. So
nothing better than Christmas parties.
So it feels a little early, even though
does.
it's just normal days.
Correct.
My belly still is incredibly full.
Yeah, still digesting last night's food. I love it. Well, we're excited. If this is your first time listening, I'm Spencer, my co-host Adam, and we are super excited to have a conversation with you today about a message that neither of us delivered.
No.
Which is great. It's kind of cool that we get to dissect and talk about something that we just witnessed, which I think is just different and dynamic. Nick delivered an incredible message.
Come on, Nick.
Just killed it on our part 2 of our Merry and Bright Christmas series. If you have yet to listen to it, I do encourage you on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your messages or podcasts, take a listen to it because it was great. Very intellectual, very easy to follow, clear.
Yeah, very systematic.
Very systematic. Yeah, it helped my OCD brain walk through a really great opportunity.
The teacher and Nick just came right out.
It was it was meaty. I love it.
Yeah.
But we continue in our series, Merry and Bright, as we are each week looking at the gifts of the Magi or the wise men, interpreting the reality of what happened in that moment, the prophetic meaning of each one of those gifts, and what it actually means for us today to impact our worship to Jesus, our view of Jesus, and our worship to Him.
Absolutely.
Which is so cool, honestly.
It's a great perspective, and I think it's one that, again, we can explore and can continue to explore. And I think the last week we talked about gold and representing the kingship. I think, we don't have kings, but we have authority. We have governors. We have rulers. We can get our head kind of wrapped around this idea of authority. I think we can see how God is the ultimate authority, and so there's a line of not just sons but citizens in the kingdom. Okay, what does that look like? But this week talking about frankincense, which again we don't talk about frankincense. It's not. No,
and Nick made a joke about it too, which was completely accurate, because the only time I've ever heard frankincense been talked about is with essential oil.
Essential oil.
And he made such a great joke. It was legendary.
Yeah. So frankincense is one of these things that you don't really talk about. It's just don't talk about it. You sing about it in your Christmas song of We Three Kings. That's pretty much about the only time, if you're a non-essential oilist.
Understanding.
And it references and points to Jesus as our high priest, this divinity, this divine calling, which I actually think for us is probably, out of all three, probably the hardest one for us to maybe get our head around on this side of the cross.
So culturally distant,
right,
to the reality of what that means or looks like.
Like we were just talking a little bit before we started, like the very first high priest mentioned in scripture is Aaron. So it's Moses' brother Aaron. He becomes the first high priest, representing the voice of God, the mediator between Israel, which is now a nation of about 1 million-ish people, and God. And he is the one who is performing all the sacrificial rituals. He's the one who is hearing people's, concerns and prayers and mediating this relationship between God and man.
He's atoning for their sins. He's the mediator.
Yeah, he's taking the sacrifices that they're bringing. He's doing the sacrificial system. He's mediating it. And I just think what a burden that is.
My goodness.
What a burden to bear. Moses was the prophet. He spoke on behalf of God. But Aaron was the mediator as the high priest.
Flawed and sinful. And this has been preached 10 billion times, but if you don't take your own personal sin seriously, you're going to die.
Yeah, because the high priest traditionally would go into the Holy of Holies, which is the very deepest part of the tabernacle or the
inner
temple,
tent.
the inner tent.
At that point with Aaron.
Yeah, and they'd have to be ceremonial clean once a year. They would go in, they would tie a rope around the ankle with a bell attached to it, because if the bell stopped ringing, it was meant that the high priest died. And again, I don't know if that's actually happened. I don't know if that was just in case, or if there was actually stories of that actually happening.
It had to have.
I'm sure it had to happen.
It had to have.
Because they were at the bell, they had to pull, because no one wanted to go into the Holy of Holies.
Think of Uzziah touching the ark, touching the cart that held the ark.
Yeah, in order
Dead.
so it doesn't fall, with good intentions.
Dead.
So they pulled him out. So there's this holiness factor to this position.
Yeah, big time.
And so Old Testament first century followers of Jesus and Old Testament followers of Jesus would have understood what the high priest is. Today we don't really have that role, because Jesus comes in, the veil of the temple, when he dies on the cross, it tells us that the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, which separated the Holy of Holies to the common people.
Yeah.
Basically giving access to all believers, access to Jesus, access to God the Father through Jesus as the ultimate high priest. Which is a trip, because Jesus not only is the high priest, but he's also God. Right?
Yeah,
so it's
totally.
access to God through God.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we live in this New Testament model where we get to go directly to God. We don't have to go to the church. We don't have to go through sacrificial systems. We don't have to kill some sheep. We don't have to get all bloody and stinky. Just think about that for a second.
Thank God.
Think about how bloody and stinky all of that was.
I don't want to.
But you just think about, we don't have to go through that. We just can just go right to God through prayer wherever we are, with a contrite heart, right, and a right spirit. And so we live in this world where, and I've said this before, like many of us, if we're going to be honest, we still adopt an Old Testament model of going to the presence of God, where we only know about God and are hear from God through, quote unquote, the high priest's personal experience, like through the pastor, small group leader, Sunday school teacher, even or parent, grandparent, maybe.
Yeah.
Where we only know about God through somebody else's personal experience.
Yeah.
And we've sort of submitted ourselves to this Old Testament model of knowing about God. So we actually know about God, but we actually don't know God. Where New Testament, Jesus is like, I want you to know me.
Yep.
Like, I'm inviting you into not just a religion, but into a relationship with me, where I want you to come to me personally.
Absolutely.
And Hebrews tells us that, right? Since we have this high priest, right? We can go boldly to the throne room of God's grace, to receive throne room of grace, to receive mercy and help, to help us in our time of need. Like, there's this beautiful picture that Jesus is that bridge now. He is that person that we can go to. So, so Nick was talking about this.
Yeah.
It's a heady topic, because again, we don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
But I do think for us, our act of worship is, again, we know that worship isn't a slow song. It's not just singing songs in church. That's an expression of worship, but that's not worship. Worship is how we live our life in response to who God is.
Yeah.
Right? It's that act of surrender and submission to the Father. And so you were here this morning on Sunday morning. I was away this week, but I listened to it online. But let's talk what he kind of talked about, some practical applications, because of Jesus as the high priest.
Yeah.
Because of who he is, because of the relationship that he's offered us to the Father through the Son. What does this practically mean for us, and how we live that out as worship in our everyday life?
Yeah. Yeah. And he, like you have mentioned also, he set it up so perfectly in just giving context to what frankincense was used for in the Old Testament model. And they actually used frankincense as the perfume to anoint the sacrifices and incense in that kind of atonement process.
Right.
So that was used as worship to God, in that it accompanied the presence of God. Otherwise, it was part of their actual physical worship in being reconciled in that way. And it specifically says that perfume is holy and to be treated as such. And Nick walked through this reality of Jesus' priesthood is permanent, is permanent, and it is perfect. And this reality that once we understand the recognition of sin and how atrociously horrible it is.
Right.
Not just like, if we don't recognize our sin problem, then we don't recognize
Yeah.
the need for a perfect
It's not just
priest.
bad.
No.
It's not just doing bad things.
No.
Right?
It's complete separation,
Mm-hmm.
which on the opposite side of the spectrum hit hard on Jesus' holiness, because holiness is not just the absence of something or simply just a attribute of God. It is the essence of God, the essence of Jesus. He used examples like his righteousness is holy, his goodness is holy, his love is holy, because it means to be other, to be separate, to be holy, to be set apart. It's completely different. So once we recognize that we have a sin problem that needs to be dealt with, that wasn't perfectly dealt with, it was a Band-Aid at best, a bloody one.
The system was broken.
That we needed a perfect and permanent high priest to make our mediation, or bridge the gap between humanity and the Father, which obviously, as we said, Jesus has done, finished once and for all. So Jesus' priesthood is permanent, it's perfect, it's holy, it's set apart, and there is no need to offer sacrifices in that way anymore, but actually accept what Jesus has done and walk that out. And I think to camp, the most practical application were the last few points that Nick had mentioned based on Hebrews 10, verses 19 to 25. And I won't necessarily read the passage. You can read it for yourself, because we're basically going to read it in his points because they're scripture verbatim. So point number one, in this reality of not necessarily, like you were saying, worshiping God in a song, but actually how we worship God with our life in Christian living, and how that matters equally as much. Because we have a great high priest, we actually have a certain way to live. And that's worship to God. Our whole life, right? Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto God. And then you'll know what God's will for your life is. Absolutely. This is God's will for your life. Number one, draw near with a sincere heart and the full assurance that faith brings. Draw near to God. Like we just talked about, this reality that you have the opportunity, because of Jesus' priesthood, because of his perfect and permanent sacrifice, he bridged the gap so that we can draw near to God. Full stop.
Yeah.
With, and this is an important caveat, a sincere heart.
Right.
And I really liked this. This was good. Because it talks about frankincense in Old Testament model being a pleasing aroma when it's offered with a sincere heart. When it's offered in the right statute, when it's offered when you're cleansed, Aaron, for example, when you're cleansed, then you can offer the aroma,
right? Because
you're at a clean hands and a pure heart, like we would say. And the same is true today. Not that we can't necessarily draw near to God in whatever state we're in, I suppose, but a sincere heart says, Jesus, I want you, not what you have. A sincere heart says, Jesus, I want to draw near to you, not because of what you can give me, but because I want you.
Yeah.
I want to be near to you.
Absolutely.
And yes, the benefits of that will be blessing, will be whatever that looks like. But I don't come to you for your gifts. I come to you for you.
Totally. And we all know, as every parent knows, and anybody, you know that people can say the right things in the wrong way.
Totally.
Right? Like you can say all the right things, but do it all in the wrong way, and it comes across completely wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what that is.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you can, if you're not saying it with a sincere heart in the right way, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what rituals you perform or what duties you walk through.
Absolutely.
So it's really important that our heart's in the right spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So we draw near to him with a sincere heart and the full assurance that faith brings. And this was a great, great point in the assurance of salvation, in the hope that what Jesus did was final, that his blood was thorough, and perfect and complete. And that reality of questioning whether or not I can enter. We've all experienced, at least I'm pretty sure if you're a human, you've experienced the reality that when you sin, you feel shame that you can't approach God.
Right.
But, and Nick communicated this so well, is that we need a revelation that Jesus' blood is complete and final. And that, yea, though we sin, it does not separate us from him no longer.
Right.
But we can continue to come with him with a sincere heart, obviously, but with full assurance that his blood, past, present, and future, is complete and finished.
Yeah. What a beautiful thought that is.
It's so gutting.
You know, when you realize how many times we rob ourselves of the presence of God because we've cut ourselves off. We've cut ourselves off thinking we are not worthy enough.
Absolutely.
Good enough. And we aren't, but God's grace says you are.
I remember in my youth and my immaturity, struggling with sin and stuff. You probably thought I was so dumb. Being in a youth pastor's office, just crying and being like, I'm so unworthy of God's love. And he was trying to be kind. And then he looked at me. He said, yes, you are.
Yeah, get over it.
But Jesus still wants to be with you anyway.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can get over myself and my shame because Jesus already dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to like wallow.
Yeah.
And I don't need to, I'm going to preach. I don't need to beat myself up over it as if I'm helping Jesus' blood a little bit. His blood is thorough and final.
Yeah, he doesn't need
I don't need to help him.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good thought.
It's finished.
Yeah.
I can actually just approach him. So we have full assurance that that's our reality. And we can draw near to him in that reality, no matter what we've done or where we've been.
That's good.
Good stuff. Point number 2, hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. And that hope being that full assurance, unswervingly in the reality of the day and age and culture we live in, with the scripture says the false wind of every teaching blowing like the wind, holding as a firm and steadfast, faithful witness to Jesus, and hoping in that. And that's actually not just like good for you, it's actually worship to God.
Right.
To stand firm in that, to the hope that you profess in Jesus. And then kind of going into what it means like to live as living sacrifices, as worship unto God with one another in Christian living and church life as the body of Christ, going into consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds.
Yeah, I loved how we talked about that spurring word.
It was great.
Yeah. It sounds great. It sounds very poetic.
It totally does.
Until you actually start meeting like what that actually means.
Yeah, when he read it, and I've read that a million times, it's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But a spur is that little sharp, basically ninja star on the back of a boot that you would dig into a horse's side so that they would obey, so that they would do the right thing, so that they would continue in the process in which they were created for.
Yeah.
And we're actually called to spur one another on. A couple synonyms he used was incite.
Yeah, provoke.
Yeah. It was great. He's like, and talking about that we might have to get a little uncomfortable when we put ourselves in situations in which we have to be
100%. And that's what Proverbs talks about as iron sharpens iron, right? Like there is a healthy kind of conflict that comes through growth.
Yeah.
It's a good parent understands that there's a healthy conflict when it comes to training up your child in the way they should grow and go. Amen. You know, and that isn't hatred. That is actually incredible deep love that is compelling me to correct you before it hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, you know? And so we're going to provoke, incite, spur on one another towards life and godliness. And
that's the point right there, life and godliness. Because, and I think I just got this, because if we want people to live a life of worship, that's to be holy and set apart. And when you see a brother and sister in sin or in error, and you say, I'm just going to love them through it. And that definition to you means just like being nice to them, and not saying tolerating. Yeah. That's the least loving thing you can do, because you're allowing them to separate themselves from God.
Yeah.
The most loving thing you could do would be in truth and love. And I mean that in the literal way of being kind. Confront their sin.
Yeah. I heard someone say, I don't know. I've heard I call him my pastor. He doesn't know my name, but Chris Hodges, I listen to him all the time. He said this, but I also saw somebody quoted this to Lisa Bevere. So I don't know who actually said this first, but it says, is that truth without grace is mean.
Truth without grace is mean.
Truth without grace is mean.
Yeah.
But grace without truth is meaningless. Meaning,
Yep.
Jesus came full of grace and truth. And so he was loving in his acceptance of people,
Yeah.
but he called people to a higher standard.
Yeah.
So he says, I love you as you are.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's grace. But I love you too much to leave you the way you are. That's truth.
Totally.
And I love that Jesus always led with grace.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we try to lead with truth,
Yeah.
right? We try to lead with truth, like religion. We try
Yeah.
to lead with duties and responsibilities.
Right.
We haven't even got their hearts yet. Jesus is like, give me your heart first.
Yeah.
If you love me, then you'll obey my commandments,
Right.
Jesus says.
Yes.
Like, we're going to lead with grace, and then we're going to speak the truth in love. And
Get up. Go sin no more.
And that's the spurring on, right?
Yeah.
And that's the call to encourage one another. That's why he says, don't give up gathering together. Don't give up meeting together.
Which is the next point.
Because-
Do not give up the meeting, which some of you are in the habit of
And
doing.
some of us, I heard someone else say, accountability. This is somebody needs to hear this today.
This is for you today.
Accountability, like somebody spurring you on,
Yep.
is not church hurt.
Come on. Let's go.
Like somebody holding
do
you
it.
accountable to your walk in faith, your walk with Christ, and telling you, like they're spurring you on, saying, "Hey, that thing you did, or that place you went, or that habit you have, isn't godly, and I'm going to hold you accountable to because I love you. I love you, and I want you to be fully connected to Christ. I don't want anything to like that's not church hurt.
It's called being a Christian.
It's called accountability." Right? That's called spurring one another on love and grace. Now, I don't want a stranger coming up and just, pointing, but in relationship, if my pastor,
course.
my small group leader, or my Sunday school teacher, or my parent, or my, my mentor, and there may be an elder in our
dear
church,
friend.
and they're like, "Hey, I love you, but I gotta, this isn't right."
Yeah.
And you leave the church because no, that's not church hurt. That's a different topic. We can talk about church hurt, but accountability, man, we need it.
Yep.
And accountability is great if you do what you said you were going to do.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's like an amazing checkpoint of saying, look how far we've come. If you're not doing what you said you're going to do, then accountability stinks.
Yep.
And that's why one of us run away from it, because very few of us follow through to do what we said we are going to do.
Yeah.
That's why the Bible tells us, let your yes be yes, your no be no. Like follow through with what you said you're going to do.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so I think spurring one another on is incredibly important, of gathering together, staying in connected, staying in community, not just showing up as an attendee in a large gathering, but being connected in a small group is so valuable to that reality of growing together as we pursue Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why, like you said, the meeting together, which was point number 4, is so vitally important, because we actually need one another. It's not just a cute idea to come to church. It is vital to your life, to you remaining as a Christian for the long term, to stay on the straight and narrow, to be a part of a local church body.
And it's not just that we need you, is that you need us. Like it's both.
100%.
Like it's both and. Like we need the gifts and the personality and the experiences and the perspectives that you bring to the body of Christ.
Everyone has a part
and
to
you
play.
need what we bring to you.
Yeah.
And when we aren't connected, we are actually robbing the body of the unique part that we play in the body. And so it's like the hand just not showing up one day. I just quit. The left hand messed me up, so
I got home from church on Sunday and my neck just gave out. I don't know what happened. And let me tell you, I need my neck. I'll tell you that for free.
It's a pretty important piece.
It's a pretty important piece. But when one part of the body doesn't do its function and doesn't do it properly, it affects everything.
Everything else
I think about it.
compensates,
You know what I mean? I obsess over it. And the reality is we need to be together.
Yeah.
It's not just a checklist on your weekly to do. It is vitally important.
But it's
to your
more than
Christian
socially
life.
together. I think this is the big thing that we're growing in. I have to keep on reminding myself, and because again, I think some of us are afraid of the spurring on. We don't want to come across as super spiritual or whatever terms we want to use to fear, to make us afraid of spurring others on in the relationship.
Our entire society is based around how to be comfortable.
Right. And I think church for a long time was a social gathering of like-minded people, like-valued people. But I think these last 3 or 4 years has really proven that church needs to be way more than that. that church has to be a place where we are actually encouraging and spurring one another and reminding why we are here. What Peter talked about. We are aliens in this world. We are sojourners in this world. Don't get lost on the things of this world. Don't get lost on, how you feel in the moment. There's something bigger at play. Keep your heavenly focus.
Yeah, we need to edify the body when we gather together.
We have to. We're a spiritual community, not just a social community.
And to end with that, point number 5, encourage one another. Encourage one another. Like being a part of church life is actually using the gift of encouragement. I don't want to make it weird. I don't want to make it uncomfortable. It's not.
Yeah.
Love your brother and sister. Love your family member. Encourage them.
Right.
Because I need it.
We all need it.
It's horrible to give because it feels so awkward. We're so Canadian.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it weird. But
make it weird.
I'll send them a text later.
Yeah.
Just look someone in the eye. Give them an encouragement on Sunday.
Dude, it messed, not only in my experience, and I've tried practice this more and more, but when you look at somebody eyeball to eyeball, okay, which is in itself is weird.
Even saying it.
Right? When you actually just look at somebody eyeball to eyeball and you give them a very simple, genuine encouragement, not only will it impact them, it will impact you.
Big time.
Because you will feel how precious it is. You will feel how void that our hearts are of it.
Yep, 100%.
And you will actually feel that you are breathing life into their body. And it is a crazy thing.
It is.
And I bet if we could just get a hold of it.
Yeah.
Again, don't make things up.
Totally.
Don't go to lie.
It doesn't have to be false.
Don't be false. But be genuine.
Yeah.
Be simple.
Yeah.
But just be true. Like just be like lock in it for a second.
Yeah.
And I just think you're staring at me too much right now, eyeball to eyeball. It's making me uncomfortable. I'm just joking. But it is a beautiful thing. And I think that encouragement is a beautiful reality.
Yeah.
And if we could get a hold of that, of exhorting people, encouraging people,
totally.
drawing out the hope of Christ in people. And again, all this circles back to we can do this because of Jesus as the high priest. Like he gives us the ability. He helps us in our time of need. He gives us grace and mercy.
Yeah.
We're able to go into the presence of God. And when we go into the presence of God, we are filled with the Spirit of God. And all that comes out of us, the fruit of the Spirit, is out of the overflow of what we've experienced in our relationship with God the Father through Christ the Son as the high priest. Again, we're not going through a mediator. I mean, if you're only knowing about God through, me preaching the word on a Sunday or through these podcasts, you are robbing yourself. You are robbing yourself of so much that Jesus wants to show you and reveal to you. You're robbing yourself of this beautiful relationship. Sure, you can know about him, you can believe in him, but you want to trust in him, you got to know him relationally. That's the only way that is really going to grow. You want to know Jesus as Lord, as King of your life?
Totally.
Then you've got to be in that kind of relationship that he invites us into. And that's this beautiful reality of the frankincense, this pointing to the high priest, this beautiful aroma, as worship as a beautiful aroma, as we offer our bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to him.
Yeah.
And that is, you connect that even to the sacrificial system of, we don't have to die, but we're dying to ourselves daily as we worship, as an act of worship.
Yeah. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto him.
Yeah. For this is your spiritual act of worship.
Yeah. It's our whole life.
Yeah.
It's everything.
So what a beautiful call. What a beautiful reminder. And for us this Christmas that we don't see Jesus in the manger as just innocent baby in a manger, but we see this as like, this is the gateway for us to know God personally and intimately. And as we get to know Jesus. What a beautiful picture that is.
Incredible. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Sunday Encore. We pray this sparks Jesus-centered conversations in your home or small group as we continue to grow into an overflowing relationship with Jesus.